you very much. Wow. I like New York in June. How about you? Good to be home. Wow. Look at y'all. It's impossible to be discouraged. Take 1 second, look around. See who these trusty companions are. We shall overcome, folks. It's very clear. I wish you could stand up here and look out and see what I can see. It's such a pleasure to be at Cooper Union, about which I've heard so much, which I know a little bit, and I'm just very proud to be in that tradition. I also really like the way Heidi reminded us about things like the Fourth Amendment and the Constitution, because as an Army officer, I took a solemn oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. How many of you, let me have a show of hands, so you didn't have to be an Army officer. Many people have sworn that oath. Raise your hand if you swore that oath. Yeah, okay, several. It's not, guess what, folks? That oath has no expiration date. You don't have to be on active duty. All you have to do is have sworn that oath. Now, as we watch everyone from the president on down to all these generals with the fancy suits on, they look like good humor guys now, don't they? Or South American dictators. You know, we have to live up to that oath. We have to figure out what we do about it, because the thing we can't do is nothing. In the brief time I have here, I was sorting through things on the train up, and as usual, there's too much, but I thought maybe I'd share with you a vignette, a series of things that I partly had a role in, to put this into context, and this being the NSA illegal, unconstitutional eavesdropping on all of us. The first commandment at NSA, thou shalt not eavesdrop on American citizens without a court warrant. Quote, end quote. Now, we know that James Risen uncovered what was going on well before the election in 2004, but when Sulzberger of the Times went to the White House and said, oh, we have this terrible news that you've been snooping on us and violating vice and all that, Bush and Cheney persuaded him not to publish on that, okay? That was before the 2004 election, okay? Now, the New York Times thought they'd be very polite and not publish on it all throughout 2005, until they realized that their own journalist, James Risen, had a book in Galley, okay, coming out in January, and would have this incredible story about illegal eavesdropping. So, Sulzberger called the White House and said, you know, we're going to have to break the story now, because it'd be very embarrassing if it appeared in James Risen's book and we hadn't taken note of it. And Bush said, no, you can't. Come to the Oval Office, I'll tell you why. They went to the Oval Office, and Bush said, no, you can't do that. It'd be very secret, it hurt the security. And finally, Sulzberger said, well, now we're going to have to do that. And the president said, well, okay. That was on the 5th of December, 2005. On the 6th of December, General Alexander, about, you know, whenever I hear General Alexander, I always think uptown is Alexander's. For those of you who come from the Bronx, you know what that means, right? Okay. Well, you know, you couldn't have a fancier guy standing up uptown Alexander than Alexander. Okay, well, Alexander's been very much in the news now, and we have him dissimulating, lying. And he was an inheritor of what he received from Michael Hayden, who was the head of NSA when Cheney and his pal Bush came into office. Now, Cheney told General Hayden before 9/11, General Hayden, that first commandment out there in NSA is for the birds. Diss it, we want you to collect it, everybody. And what did General Hayden do? Yes, sir, I'll do that, okay. So, what we have here is a situation where the good boys do what they're told, and they get promoted. Hayden got promoted to Deputy National Intelligence Director, and then, when he was going to be head of the CIA, something really interesting happened that I haven't shared with anybody else. Everyone knew, because of Reisen's book and the New York Times play of it, that General Hayden had played fast and loose with the Constitution, with the Fourth Amendment, and with the First Amendment of the NSA, thou shalt not eavesdrop on Americans without a warrant, right? Okay. So there was a meeting here at the New York Public Library. Whoa. It was May 8th, 2005. And who was there? James Reisen. And the most respected person who ever headed up the NSA, and who, is sort of a living legend in the intelligence community, and his name is Bobby Inman. Now, Bobby Inman had been the NSA director when the FISA law was being written. Actually, he wrote part of the FISA law. So what did Bobby Inman say at this meeting, open meeting, at the New York Public Library? He said, what General Hayden did is it really violates FISA, okay? There clearly was a line, this is a quote, clearly was a line in the FISA statute which says you can't do this. Inman added, we put an extra sentence into that bill, and it said, quote, you can't do anything that's not authorized in this bill, end quote. So Inman was in high dudgeon, right? He said this was a deeply ingrained. I don't know why, if you couldn't operate within the law, says Inman, you have changed the law. And Reisen says, well, they claimed they couldn't change the law. Everybody laughed, and Reisen says, yeah, I know. At this time, after 9/11, you could put up guillotines on every street corner in New York City, and no one would object. They could have changed the law, and they didn't. Now, what's a little footnote to this? Well, there was a Senate Intelligence Committee chair. His name was Rockefeller, J. Rockefeller, a good guy, one of those progressives, right? And when Cheney briefed him on what was happening very early on, as soon as Bush and Cheney came in, guess what J. Rockefeller did? He knew that he couldn't share anything with anybody because they told him it was a secret. And he couldn't even use his computer, so he hand wrote a note to Cheney. And he said, I have misgivings about this warrantless eavesdropping, and could you please tell me more about it? And you know what he did? He made a copy himself. He learned how to work the Xerox machine. He made a copy, and he put it in his personal file. Wow! Talk about oversight, huh? Never got an answer from Cheney. Hello? Now, the coup de grace here, Rockefeller misplaced the file from his safe. And so when Cheney left office, Cheney got on TV, and this is what he said. Senator Rockefeller just sent me an email asking if I could please make him another copy of that letter he wrote to me way back in 2009, because he lost his. That's what's going on here, folks. The big boys know what's best for us. And the thing that I really want to spare out of a personal experience was May 8th, 2006, okay? Now, what happened on May 6th, 2006 was I had that wonderful chance to challenge Rumsfeld. And so I got on Lou Dobbs. And I'm sitting in the anteroom there waiting to go in to talk to Lou Dobbs, and they tell me, oh, wait a second, we got a special person coming in here. In sweeps Bobby Inman. And I'm saying, oh, great! Because they had just nominated Hayden to be the head of the CIA. And I said, oh, this is wonderful. If Bobby Inman says what he said last night at the New York Public Library, that's the end of Hayden, and good riddance. So I'm watching on the tube that they had in the waiting room there, and Lou Dobbs says, what do you think of General Hayden? And Bobby Inman says, fantastic fellow. He's the best qualified guy you could ever imagine for this job. And I'm looking at him, and I'm going to go bang on the door. Like, wait a second, what'd you say last night at the New York Public Library? Well, what's the lesson here? They're all in this together. They know what's best for us. we're not entitled to know about what's going on. It's a rule by the elite, and we have to put a stop to it. You know, when I think about my Irish grandmother, you know, she warned me about the elite when I was going out to caddy for my first job in East Hampton. She said, "Raymond, you're gonna be with the upper crust, you know, and you have to know about the upper crust." She had been a seamstress and worked with the upper crust, so I said, "Grandma, I know." She said, "Sit ye down, Raymond, I'll tell you about the upper crust. The upper crust is a bunch of crumbs held together by a lot of dough." So what do we do? Well, here's Clapper saying, "Oh, I gave the least untruthful response that I could." Man, that's perjury. That's perjury, okay? Out and out perjury. General Alexander, okay? I mentioned this little pas de deux when Sulzberger goes to the White House on December 5th, 2005, because Bush wants to dissuade him from publishing an article when his own journalist is putting out a book. Sulzberger says, "I'm going to do it." The White House knows, but guess what? They forget to tell uptown it's Alexander's, General Alexander, okay? And guess what happens? Rush Holt, one of the more progressive representatives from across the river here in New Jersey, he's on the House Intelligence Committee. And he has a parish call at NSA the next day, December 6th. And he had some rumors going around, so he said to General Alexander, "General Alexander, you're not monitoring phone calls and other things, messages about U.S. citizens without a warrant, are you?" And guess what Alexander said? "Huh, perish the thought. We would never do anything like that." 11 days later, New York Times finally publishes the article. What does Rush Holt do? Well, he's in high dudgeon. He writes an acerbic letter to General Alexander, and he tries to get it through Pete Hoekstra, who was the head of the Intelligence Committee at the time. And Hoekstra says, "No, you're making a big deal of this. This is not a big deal." And so Rush Holt, to his credit, says, "If I have anything to do with it, this guy is not going to get another star as a general." He was a lieutenant general at the time. Well, to his discredit, he hasn't let out a peep. 5 years later, when General Alexander was given a 4th star, and not only that, but another command, the Cyber Command. 14,000 people, right into the Cyber Command. General Alexander is one of the most powerful people in this country. I believe that the President, Vice President, and lots of people in Congress and the Supreme Court are afraid of uptown it's Alexander's. They're afraid of Keith Alexander. They're all compromised. He's got the book on all of them. So what do we do? Well, I think that we really have to realize that we got to do something, especially those who took this solemn oath. We can't do with the lies. The president can get up and tell a bunch of lies, which he did on Monday night to Charlie Rose. Charlie Rose is pretty good. You know, he said, "How many FISA requests have been made and how many turned down?" And what did the president say? "Oh, let me finish. I've got other stuff to say." He never answered the question, did he? You know what the answer is? FISA requests. FISA requests for warrants. Since 1979, 34,000. How many were turned down? Anybody want to guess?
0?
No, 11.
Oh.
Now, I don't know, you do the math. I'm not really good at decimal points, but 34,011, okay? So, here's the president. It reminded me of, you know, the Queen in Alice in Wonderland. Remember? Alice says, "There's no use trying. I can't believe impossible things." And the Queen says, "I dare say you haven't had much practice. When I was your age, I always did it for half an hour a day. Why, sometimes I believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." The president is asking us, to believe impossible things. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say here is pretty profound, I think, in terms of the way I come at the world, because I lived in Germany for 5 years. And I had all manner of talks with Germans, young and old, asking them, how could it possibly be? How could it possibly happen in one of the most cultured, educated peoples in the Western world? How could you let happen what happened? And guess what they said? They couldn't say anything. And we face a situation like that now. Some of you know about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the Lutheran minister who did try to do something about this. There was another fellow whom you may not have heard of. His name was Haushofer. He was a geolog, a geologist at the University of Berlin. Okay? Now, he had tenure, and some of you will know what tenure means. It meant the same in Germany, okay? And he had tenure because he kept his mouth shut. But he had a conscience. And so when he saw his friends being wrapped up, taken away to concentration camps, he decided he needed to do something. He spoke out, and he got quite a following around him. And he was wrapped up himself, like Bonhoeffer, put in a jail in Berlin. Now in Berlin, they would either hang you or shoot you if you were condemned to death for espionage or whatever it was. They hung Bonhoeffer. They were going to shoot Haushofer, but before they did this, the Germans were very orderly, and they said, you have to sign a confession. And Haushofer wouldn't do it. And so they shot him anyway, and as they picked him up off the floor, there's a little settle, a little piece of paper, and it was his confession, and it was composed in the form of a sonnet, and I'm going to share it with you. It's very brief. Doch bin ich schuldig, aber anders als ihr denkt. Yes, I'm guilty, but it's not what you're thinking. Ich musste früher meine Pflicht erkennen. Ich musste schärfer Unheil nennen. I should have früher, anyone? Earlier. Ich musste früher meine Pflicht erkennen, recognize my duty. Ich musste schärfer Unheil nennen. I should have more sharply called evil, right? Mein Urteil habe ich zu lang gelegt. I put off my judgment far too long. Ich habe gewarnt, aber nicht genug und klar. Okay, I did warn, and he did, aber nicht genug. Genug, enough. Und klar, claro. There's no comparative in German for klar, klar, okay? Ich habe gewarnt, aber nicht genug und klar. Und heute weiß ich, was ich schuldig war. And today, I recognize what I was guilty of. Dr. King said famously, there is such a thing as too late, folks. As I look out at you tonight, I see a recognition that it's getting very near that time. We're not going to be obedient, servile Germans, and we're not going to be conned by the upper crust. We're going to seek the truth, we're going to find it, and then we're going to act on it. Thank you very much.